Arena. I'm your host, Mindy McAlindon. Joining me today is Chairman Michael Whatley from the RNC. With all of the excitement, the upheaval, the changes that are going on in the world, it is great to have someone like Chairman Whatley at the helm of the RNC. He has brought Protect the Vote to the RNC for the 2024 election, and it really made a difference. Over 200,000 volunteers, over 6,000 lawyers were ready to go on election day. He has also been appointed to the FEMA Oversight Committee for all of the changes and all of the needs that are going on in North Carolina. I think you'll find him really fascinating, so let's bring in Chairman Michael Whatley. Welcome, Michael.
Well, it's great to be on with you, Mindy. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you here, Chairman. We have worked together for several years at the RNC, and it's been great. But a lot of people may not know much about your background. So could you just kind of start with us and tell us a little bit how you got to be chairman of the RNC?
Well, it's been a long and winding road, but, I was growing up in North Carolina, and, I'll never forget watching President Reagan get sworn in on January 20th, 1981. And while he was giving his speech, they kind of broke away to say that Iran was releasing the hostages. They had 52 hostages that had been held for 444 days because Iran was absolutely terrified of what Ronald Reagan was going to do if they didn't release them. And I thought, man, I'm with that guy. So that's the day I became a Republican, and, very, very excited to grow up, and go through, kind of my paces. The first campaign that I ever volunteered for was Ronald Reagan's reelect in 1984, and had a long history of kind of supporting candidates by making phone calls and knocking on doors and putting out yard signs and basically volunteering with campaigns, and really came to Washington D.C. in 2000 and had an opportunity to work with President Bush's campaign and then serve in his administration, and spent time working with as Elizabeth Dole's chief of staff, but really met President Trump and his team in 2015 when I signed on and helped run North Carolina along with North Carolina's current chair, Jason Simmons. He and I were the senior advisor and the state director. So we won that, and then became the chair in North Carolina, and really truly focused there on fundamentals. North Carolina is a battleground state, and in order to win in a battleground state, you have to have three things. You got to have a really good candidate who runs a really good race. You got to get out the vote, and you got to protect the ballot. So we kind of put fundamentals in place there to get out the vote and protect the ballot. And when President Trump won in North Carolina in 2016, I was asked to be the state chair for 2020 cycle. And we were the only battleground state where we were able to deliver on getting out the vote and protecting the ballot amongst the battleground states. And that's when President Trump asked me to step up and run the RNC for the 24 cycle.
Well, and you have done a lot with election integrity. And I remember just from the time that we've served together on grassroots or on election integrity committees, that you really set the standard in North Carolina of what that looked like to protect the ballot, to be sure that people knew if their ballots had been cast for them ahead of time, giving people the opportunity to check. So I applaud all that work that you've done. And I think you've really taken that into the RNC. So let's talk about a little bit about what you've done just in terms of making sure in this last election and then ongoing that we have good, solid election integrity, that we are protecting our ballots.
Yeah, it is so fundamental that we have election integrity. It is so fundamental that we have protections in place to make sure that there's not cheating, and we saw, coming out of 2020, a national conversation on election integrity like we've never had before. And I think it was long overdue. I think it was very fundamental part of the conversations when I was the state chair in North Carolina, that we had to have a statewide election integrity program that we were able to put in place. When you think about the fundamentals, right? Only American citizens can vote. States need to clean up their voter rolls. Voter ID, really, really essential. And you've got to have basic protections for mail-in ballots. These are things that 70, 80, 90% of all Americans, including independents and Democrats, support. And for us to have a Democratic Party in operation that are going to continually fight those every single day invites the question, why do you not want voter ID? Why do you not want states to clean up their voter rolls. Why in the world would you want to take away protections on mail-in ballots? The only thing that you can really surmise is they want to have avenues for cheating.
Right.
If we can clean up those elections, it's absolutely essential for us. So the program that Laura Trump and I put in place when we took over the RNC last year in March was kind of three parts. One, you got to have the right rules of the road in place before voting starts, because it's absolutely important for everybody to understand how the rules are going to be set up, what's going to govern the election cycle. So we spent a lot of time, working with governors and secretaries of state and legislators to change the rules and get those fundamentals in place. And when that didn't work, we went to court. We ended up filing 175 lawsuits all across the country, most of them on election integrity, to make sure that we had those rules in place. Number two, you've got to be in a room. You got to have volunteers that are going to serve as poll workers and poll observers. You need to have attorneys that are going to be in place every time a vote is cast or counted. So what we did with the battleground states was we went out and recruited. Laura Trump and I did our national Protect the Vote tour with Pam Bondi, Matt Whitaker, and Kash Patel to make sure we were bringing in the bodies that we needed, the lawyers that we needed, the volunteers we needed to be in the room. 230,000 volunteers, 6,500 attorneys, and in every battleground state, we were in every single precinct. And third, you got to talk about it. We needed to send a very clear, consistent message to every Republican voter. Your vote is not going to be canceled by cheating. I think one of the main reasons we did not do as well in 22 as we did, as we expected to, is because we had a lot of people say, you know what, I'm not going to vote because my vote's going to get canceled by cheating. And they're not going to protect my ballot, so I'm just going to stay home. And when you have, 2, 3, 4, 5% of Republican voters sit it out because they don't trust the system, that's why we lose in really close races. We could not afford that this time around. We also knew that it's important to tell everybody on the other side, if you cheat or you help somebody else cheat, we're going to find you and we're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. So we're going to really need to make sure that the messaging was out there very effectively. Laura and I had 1,000 earned media hits between the two of us on election integrity alone to get that message out there, and it worked. We saw obviously lots of issues that came up on election day, over 20,000 of them that we handled through our war room, but none of them were systematic. And we did not see the ballot harvesting operations the way that we had in 2020 in a lot of those battleground states, which made a huge difference. When we see 10% fewer votes by mail in places like Milwaukee and Detroit and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, that's a major function of having these types of programs in place.
I agree. And I will tell you, just being on the ground in 22 versus 24, you could feel the difference. You could feel that people felt confident that that there was something in place. And we didn't feel that in 22. People were very disgruntled coming out of 20, felt like maybe the integrity wasn't there in the elections. And then in 22, I agree with you. I think there's a percentage that carried that with them and stayed home from the vote because it didn't matter. And we heard that over and over. And I knocked a lot of doors in 22, and you kind of heard that over and over. But in 24, I think you and Laura Trump got that message out really well. And that the general population, the grassroots, was hearing, hey, we've got you covered. And then to constantly hear those stories of, oh, there's something's happening in Georgia. Oh, but wait, it's taken care of within an hour, right? And so people, I think, felt really confident coming out. And hopefully that continues to bleed on, because this was not a one-off, right?
It can't be. It absolutely can't be, because, the folks that want to weaken these protections, that want to continue to fight, voter ID, they're going to keep fighting, right? They're well-funded, they're entrenched. And so what we need to do as we go into 26 is really go back to the fundamentals that we ran on in 24. We're going to have those candidates that are going to run good races. But our job at the RNC and with the state parties, the Arkansas GOP and others, is going to be making sure that we're getting out the vote, we're protecting the ballot. That has to be a permanent part of our strategy going forward, which is why we set up a permanent, program at the RNC, an election integrity program.
Yeah.
And we are keeping on, the leadership of that team from 24 with Josh Helton and Brian Swenson, who are serving as our senior advisors and building up those programs. The map's going to change in the 26 cycle from 24, but the program and the priorities are not. And ultimately, we need to have this type of program up and running in every single state by the state parties and have the RNC come in and supplement those efforts where we need to.
I love that. And I know we don't have a ton of time with you, so I'm going to jump to another topic real quick. But just so you know, we have on our ballot coming up in 26 in Arkansas, the Only Citizens Vote initiative. So we are very excited about that. And I feel certain that is something that we can get passed. So anyways, I know that's important to continue on. Let's talk about President Trump's accomplishments in the first 100 days. There's so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to start. But let's maybe give me your top 3 of what you think is really game-changing that he's done in the first 100 days.
Well, look, this is promises made, promises kept. The fact is that throughout the course of the campaign, the president made promises really in 4 distinct areas that he focused on in terms of how you're going to make America great again. And that is to rebuild our economy, restore the southern border, keep our kids and our communities safe, and make sure that we're strong enough to protect our interests and allies around the world. So you can look at every person that he has picked for the cabinet, all of his White House staff, all of his executive actions, everything that has taken place so far really fits neatly into one of these priority sets. Everything that he's doing is about keeping the promises that he made on the campaign. And right now, we're already seeing fruits of those labors. The border in 100 days has been completely shut down. Illegal immigrant crossings are down 99.9% from where they were a year ago. And we're making sure long-term that we're going to keep that program in place and keep that border shut down. And the violent crime from that community, we need to deport the violent criminal illegal aliens. We need to get fentanyl off of our streets. Those are huge priorities for the president. When it comes to the economy, we're already seeing grocery prices, gasoline prices, and housing prices starting to come down. It's not much of a trend over 100 days, but it is absolutely moving in the right direction. And we're setting up the economy to be extraordinarily strong. And when you look at the jobs that have been created over the course of the first 100 days, 345,000 high-paying jobs have been created economy-wide, far surpassing expectations and dwarfing what President Biden was able to do over the course of his 4 years. You look on the international stage, recruiting is up, at the Pentagon. Every single branch is hitting their recruiting goals for the first time in 4 years. We are working with Congress right now to make sure that we have a very robust spending program. And Secretary Pete Hegseth and his team are working every day to make sure that lethality is the highest priority for our military, that we're going to be able to go into the field and we're going to be able to take care of our interests and allies instead of worrying about, woke indoctrination programs that President Biden had been getting in. And when it comes to the most important thing in our universe, in your universe, in my universe, and everybody else across this country, is our communities and our families. And what the president has done to really, truly strengthen our communities and our families, to get woke out of schools, to get boys out of girls' sports, to get men out of women's locker rooms, to make sure that we have an economy that is going to allow our communities to grow, is going to present opportunities for everyone in our families. That really is what matters most to the president, matters most to me. And we're seeing those changes are being made on a daily basis.
Well, and it matters to the average voter, right? I mean, that's really, they don't care as much about what's going on in international. If my community and my family or my school is having issues, that's where it hits home. And so I think the word that I think of when I think of what he's done in the first 100 days is disruptive. Like it has truly been just warp speed trying to get things done in a timely manner to be sure that no grass is growing. And it has really been disruptive in a positive way that we've been able to see significant changes in such a short period of time.
Yeah, President Trump has the opportunity to have the most transformational term really since Ronald Reagan's first term, starting in 1981. And he has taken a hold of that. Every single day, you can see the urgency that he and his administration are working with. And obviously, we need Congress to pass the big, beautiful bill to extend the Trump tax credits, to make sure, that we have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and, make the changes to the border and the military permanent. But we're working with a president right now who understands he has 4 years and only 4 years. He's not going to be on the ballot again, but he wants to leave this country in a fundamentally better place than he found it.
Agree. Michael, I know we're short on time. So real quick, before I let you go, what is the one thing, other than the big, beautiful bill, what is the one thing that you would like to see accomplished through the RNC over the next year?
Look, for us right now, everything focuses on the midterms. We need to make sure that President Trump is going to have 4 years to work with a Republican House and a Republican Senate. What happened coming out of the 2018 election cycle, when the Democrats were able to take the House and immediately launch into investigations and hoaxes and impeachments, cannot happen again. So for our perspective at the RNC, we want to keep our eye on the ball. We want to put first things first. We're not going to try and be all things to all people. We are going to focus on getting out the vote and protecting the ballot. In the last election cycle, we focused on reaching out to communities that the Republican Party has not traditionally focused on. Black voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, young voters. We did dramatically better among women. We need to continue to do that. We also need to make sure that we're focusing on those early vote programs and mail-in vote programs. Over half of all Republicans voted before Election Day last cycle. If they're going to continue to do that, we need to be talking to them early enough by having that national early vote program in place. And we need to focus on continuing to turn out low propensity voters like we did last cycle, because in a midterm election cycle, every voter is a low propensity voter. And of course, on the election integrity side, we're going to continue to push very aggressively to get these programs up and to have the right rules of the road in place in every state before voting starts.
That's a great goal, and I totally agree with you on that. Michael, it has been such a pleasure. It's a pleasure for me to work with you at the RNC and just the time that we've had together, and I look forward to continuing to do that. So thank you again for joining us, Chairman Michael Whatley of the RNC.
Well, I am very, very grateful for you and your leadership, and really appreciate the Arkansas delegation. We've got a lot of great champions out there, a lot of Republican champions all across the state of Arkansas. You've got a great governor, great senators, great congressional delegations.
We do.
But I'm gonna call you the leader of it all. Thank you so much, Mindy.
Thank you, Michael. Take care. Have a great day.